Okay, here's another example problem demonstrated for you. This is number 7. This is one that says, let P be the statement, the proposition that Dan is going hungry this evening, and Q be the proposition that Dan had dinner before 6 this evening. Translate the following statements into symbolic form. For part A, it says, a necessary condition for Dan not to be going hungry this evening is that he had dinner before 6. So let's think about this. A necessary condition for blank, Dan not to be going hungry this evening. Dan not to be going hungry this evening is not P, right? Is that blank, he had dinner before 6. Dan had dinner before 6. That's Q. A necessary condition for P, for not P, is Q. I think that's the same thing as saying Q is necessary for not P, right? Q is the thing that is a necessary condition for not P. Q is necessary for not P. And I think that that is translated to, if you look back in the notes, when we say Q is necessary for not P, that is the same as saying that not P implies Q. Okay? In other words, if not P is true, it's necessarily true that Q is also true. Okay? So that's the statement translated into symbolic form. For part B, we're going to say, Dan having dinner before 6 this evening. Dan having dinner before 6 this evening. That's Q. Is a necessary condition Dan having dinner before 6 this evening is a necessary condition for him not to be going hungry this evening. Not to be going hungry this evening is not P. Okay? Q is a necessary condition for not P. Hey, that's exactly how I reworded part A. So this is the same thing. Not P implies Q. Okay? And let's see. Let's just read those and see if it sounds like they say the same thing. A necessary condition for Dan not to be going hungry this evening is that he had dinner before 6. It sounds like he had to eat before 6 or else he was going to go hungry. Okay? Part B. Dan having dinner before 6 this evening is a necessary condition for him not to be going hungry. Yeah, it seems to say the same thing. He had to eat before 6 or he was going to go hungry. So those say the same thing. Part C says Dan having dinner before 6 this evening. Dan having dinner before 6 this evening. That's Q. Is a sufficient condition for him to be going hungry this evening. For him to be going hungry is P. Okay? And Q is a sufficient condition for P is equivalent to saying that Q implies P. Okay? In order to prove that P is true, it is sufficient to prove that Q is true. Okay, so this is a little bit different than the other two. And just as a side note, if you make the contrapositive of either the first two, they're equivalent to them, and it would be not Q implies P. Okay, and so that is the contrapositive to for parts A and B. Okay, so here's the answer for part A. Here's the answer for part B. There's the answer for part C. This is just an aside. Okay, I think I'll stop there. This is number 7. Thanks for listening. Hope this helps.